From the Sky News Centre, this is Paul Murray Live.
About 2 million postal votes have slowly but surely been coming back in. Relax, the result is exactly the same. But to give you an idea of where the latest numbers are after at least 4 days of counting since the week had resumed, well, surprise, surprise, things are still very much in the no favour. You can see that nationally it's almost 61% to 39% state by state. No major changes there, but I wanted you to be able to see the data in the detail, because we have never shied away from it when it was 60-40 the other way and now 60-40 the way that the country went. Those are the latest numbers. And I've got to say one thing, we have also been charting, and I noticed that there's a bit of a drumbeat starting in the left part of the media. Stop talking about it, time to move on, time to move on. Oh, OK. When they get what they want, they'll rub your face in it forever. When they don't get what they want, officially 4 days. 4 days, that's as much as you're allowed to talk about it. And there's been oh so much sooking from those that already pre-sooked the result. I can tell you the one that I was waiting for the whole time, the final shoe to drop in the sooking about your decision to reject the voice, not to say no, but to say hell no, is Nikki Savva. Nikki Savva, of course, who is a self-admitted liar and a person who, well, has all of her value in being a Liberal who seems to hate everything about the modern Liberal Party, particularly the centre-right of the Liberal Party. A Turnbull favourite, a media favourite, and has she not got some bile for the majority of the country? Remember, she wrote this in the lead-up to the vote last weekend, that the post-mortems, which will inevitably continue for decades, we can and we will blame no campaigners for playing filthy, dirty, for putting politics above everything else, for using loud-hailers to whistle up the neo-Nazis, racists and bigots with lies and misrepresentations. Apart from the fact that 60% of the country was for it and now is against it. The demons unleashed by the tactics to foment conflict for short-term political gain at the expense of vulnerable Australians will live long after Saturday's vote. Come Sunday, we will either see ourselves as a measured, generous country, ready to set aside the daily woes of our lives, only for a few minutes, to consider the place and the state of Indigenous Australians prepared to say yes to something which would cost us nothing, but could measurably improve their lives. Or as a frightened, resentful nation, unable or unwilling to see through the scares of the lies, prepared to use the ballot box to punish the government and in the process punish Indigenous people trapped in cycles of poverty and abuse. That was before she knew how the country voted. Well, of course, the country voted 60-40 against her worldview. So, of course, it's all Peter Dutton's fault. It's not the country, which was 60-40 yes and then became 40-60 in favour of no, that people changed their mind. I don't know, it was all about the evils of Peter Dutton. This was her piece today. If you thought the voice was bad, just wait for the next election. I noticed the scream coming from the lefty media, the self-appointed watchdogs of the watchdog, as they like to call themselves sometimes. They've already declared the next federal election campaign has begun. And as I told you, one of the things that will be the revenge of Albo being denied his place in history or Australia disagreeing with what these people thought was the only option on Saturday, they will come after Peter Dutton harder than ever before. And that's exactly what she does in her column today. Again, self-admitted liar, Google it, feel free to see her own comments about her own behaviour. In the aftermath, Peter Dutton has shown scant remorse for the harm that might have been inflicted on Indigenous people or on the body politic by the lies and the racist themes of some no supporters. Don't you like the sort of the cuteness here, right? So the only reason you voted no was because you fell for the lies. The lies that she says are all about Peter Dutton, as opposed to just they didn't like the idea. On Saturday night, Dutton declared that it was a good day for Australia, and anyway, whatever harm was inflicted was not his fault, it was Albanese's. Well, that, of course, is the case. It wasn't Peter Dutton who had the referendum, it was Anthony Albanese. It's Anthony Albanese who didn't split the question into recognition and the voice. It was Albo who spent $450 million on an effort that we'd been knowing for months was going south. In the fine tradition of the former Prime Minister, Tony Abbott, you see, this is the thing, they hate Tony Abbott, just as they hated John Howard. They just Move the dial up. It's a little bit like all the people who love Republicans that are willing to speak against Trump, but when those Republicans were running against Democrats, they were the worst people of all time. She goes on to say things about Advance Australia, that Advance Australia was basically the right-wing version of Get Up. And Tony Abbott, a key figure in the Advance Australia, he kept his foot on his opponent's throat. Dutton flagged his intention to use immigration, and most clearly in his budget and reply speech in May, where he said overseas migration of 1.5 million over 5 years would worsen the cost of living and inflation. Now, that's factually correct. You know and I know more people in the country, particularly on housing, when there's not the housing stock for it, means a lot of other things get worse. It's the issue most ripe for exploitation because it can feed into every grievance and every prejudice, including from migrants. Houses too expensive, roads too congested, can't find a job or a hospital bed, whatever ails you, blame immigration. And of course, Albanese. Maybe Dutton will pause and think better of it. He should. An election campaign on immigration would only cut or frame more of the threads which bind us together. It would be another tragedy for Australia. Don't you love these people? And their sanctimony. Already telling us how bad the next federal election campaign is because they've decided what the next federal election will be about. Now, I've told you many times what my expectations are about the next federal election result. Is that most likely Albanese gets re-elected, but it will be with, in my view, a minority. He will need the Teals or the Greens. Now, nobody has hidden in the analysis after Saturday night that the Teal seats are getting tealier. There are certain parts of Sydney and Melbourne which look like they could fall teal as well, but conversely, the shoe is starting to drop in Western Australia where they could lose 2, 3 or 4, they being the Labor Party. They could also lose seats to the Greens in South East Queensland, which would move them, not from their current majority of 90, but of barely under 80 seats, and you need 76 for a majority. That's what most likely is going to happen in the next election. But they've already decided Peter Dutton, Peter Dutton, Peter Dutton. They only have one setting when it comes to the people who want to deny them their bubble opinion, is that you must be exiled as a racist, exiled as a person wanting to sow division. Remember, some of the most ethnically diverse parts of the country voted no. Places where people have just arrived, and the reality is, unlike most of the people who talk about politics, like the aforementioned or many others, the very communities that have been the location where so many people end up turning up have said, please stop. Far right-wing figures like Bob Carr have said that the immigration program is too fast right now. And again, this is not code. This is just a reality. You see, if you're sitting nice and comfortable in the ACT or nice and comfortable in the cushy bits of Sydney or Melbourne, you don't care. Because you believe, like the Treasury Department does, that if we're not having enough babies, then we have to have more migration. Despite the fact that the infrastructure that currently is not fit for purpose of the 25 million people who live here, you will like it when more people arrive. Even polls in The Guardian tell us that the current rate of migration is too high. But if you mention this at all, then you're as bad as Abbott, as bad as Trump, or as bad as the great demon that was Scott Morrison. These people. We lay off after tonight, but fair dinkum. Don't you love the way that they sook? Because you use democracy. Oh, and watch that one for the next election. Democracy's on the ballot. Now, also what I'm not going to let go of is the reality that these people who were in the dirt of Uluru and caring about the Indigenous women who demanded a voice, who seem to care so little about what an Indigenous woman has to say in the Senate. Basically, many of the people who, of course, were denied their place in history, hate Jacinta Price for her ability to deny them that, by being able to argue the alternative position, the position of a proud woman from Alice Springs who's got plenty of stories from the dirt, just not the ones that Albo, the press gallery or the lefties want. You see, she doesn't believe we have to have a conversation about what happened 130 years ago. She couldn't care less. It's all about what's happening tomorrow, next month, next year. And as you know, She tried to call on the Prime Minister to have a royal commission into the child abuse that is taking place in the parts of Australia that she represents, because those people are ignored by all the people currently going silent, ignored by a government who wanted the window dressing of people in Canberra as opposed to actual solutions. And remember the behaviour of Labor and the Greens getting together with David Pocock to deny her in the Senate.
Well, it's really about an angry pursuit of the people that they don't like who didn't agree with them in the recent referendum. So we have the Leader of the Opposition, the angriest man in Australian politics, the most extreme leader of the Liberal and National parties in our history, always looking for an argument, never interested in solutions. He changed his mind more quickly and more often than Kamal.
Order.
At least Kamal's popular.
It will be dressed up to demonise our communities and our culture that has sustained us for tens of thousands of years. Our mob are hurting right now, and I know some people in this chamber don't care.
Again, this idea that if you voted no because you were lied to, you were tricked, there was misinformation, the memes did it to you, the Russians, the North Koreans, all of this crap. 60% of the country liked the idea when it was just the vibe. When they started to look at the detail or they heard from the Prime Minister more and more and more and more, guess what? They didn't. They changed their mind. And as Bronwyn Bishop has said, Jacinta Price represents a new form of Indigenous leadership, one that is not obsessed with the conversations of the past but is trying to find postcode, not race-specific, solutions to the problem of this country. Yet, of course, she will be punished because she denied the history that those who know so much better than you and I, those that are just better people because they agree with each other and therefore to disagree with them means you're not a good enough person, means you have to be punished. Well, Peter Dutton tried again in the lower house today to get the government to consider such a royal commission. This, in part, is what Peter Dutton had to say. Now, marry that up with the crap that I just read you at some length from the haters who've already decided he's the most extreme of... Get ready for this crap. They're going to do the full Trump on him, the full Trump on him.
The question is to the Prime Minister. Over the last 12 months, Senator Jacinta Price, a proud Indigenous woman, has led calls, Prime Minister, for a royal commission into child sexual abuse in Indigenous communities and an audit of spending on Indigenous programs. These calls are supported by many other Indigenous Australians, and as Leader of the Opposition, I've offered to work with the government to implement these measures. Why is the Prime Minister refusing to take these important practical actions to address serious issues facing Indigenous communities?
He didn't just ask about it in question time. He tried to move a motion, which understandably was defeated. The Libs and Nats don't have the numbers. Of course, it is the Labor Party, the Greens, the Teals that are easily able to get well beyond a majority, but it didn't stop people trying to put the boot in from the left side of politics today to the most extreme man of all time, the Trump of our moment.
What we won't be doing is agreeing to stunts which are designed to whip up outrage.
To come in without any notice and to seek a political stunt with a suspension motion about something that is as important and as sensitive of this sends a pretty clear signal about what this is about. This is about trying to create a political point against the government.
One of the issues affecting children, of course, in Indigenous communities was the issue of the stolen generations, of which there was a Royal Commission, and it found that there should be an apology given to the stolen generations, and that's something that almost everyone in this chamber was certainly prepared to do. Everyone was prepared to do.
See, that's a reference to the fact that in 2007, Peter Dutton wasn't there. He decided not to be in the chamber when the sorry was delivered, something he has, of course, apologised for since, but only Labor get a redo, you see. And most of the people that are in the media who will help cover up for the sins of the past. And they'll let people have multiple goes at an issue until they land on the side that's most politically advantageous. it's another example about what I've been talking about all week, which is the strutting around Albanese, trying to pretend that there's no bin fire behind him. You're seeing this from so many people on the left. Oh, look, we've had the vote, time to move on, time to move on, time to move on. As if there's no accountability for forcing the country to have a vote that for months we knew was going to be unsuccessful. Oh, you see, I made a promise. OK, there's a $450 million promise, when you could have used your practical political knowledge to say, we can't deliver right now the two questions in one. We're going to have to split it. Or maybe we won't go to the referendum because the numbers are the way they are, so we're going to take the $450 million and we're going to give them to you to spend in the local communities to actually change lives today. Oh, no, none of that. No accountability for that whatsoever. It's just the people who voted no are evil, dark-hearted, nasty human beings. The politicians that you agree with have something nasty and weird about them, as opposed to being the people who either were able to convince a country or at least knew where the country would end up. You see, you're not allowed to disagree in this new world. In this new world where the way that you guarantee your spot in the ever-changing game of musical chairs about the number of people who get to talk or write or comment about politics, which is to pretend that one side is holy and one side is evil. And if that one side is not the Labor Party or the Greens or the Teals, well, then, of course, you have no right to continue to have a public view. Which brings us to what Warren Mundine has had to say in the past couple of days. See, as you know, there was one line that was used over and over and over again, all the way through when things were 60-40 yes to 60-40 no, which was to say anything other than voice is awesome, voice is amazing. It was labelled the M word.
Misinformation.
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 The misinformation which is there.
Some misinformation.
Spread misinformation.
And when they weren't using that word, they were using these over and over again. Remember, to dare disagree with the front of the plane, to dare disagree with what other people tell you, you must believe. Well, you got called this.
The referendum and the way that the No campaign and, Peter Dutton and his team of wreckers really carried themselves through the referendum, really emboldened people and brought it out. People who hold particular views about First Nations people were emboldened to, say their quiet bit out loud. And I really hope that Trumpian-style politics doesn't become a regular feature of our political campaigns here in Australia.
Now, I didn't have time to put all this together for you, but just think about the stuff they used to say about the former Prime Minister, about being everything about soft on sexual assault that took place in previous work environments, all the way through to, being indifferent to bushfires or people dying or this, that and the other. Think of the outrageous stuff that they've said. But now they get to turn around and say that anyone who disagrees with, it's Trumpian. What does this even mean? Honestly, what does it mean? If it means making stuff up, then you have to say making stuff up. Just saying Trump, because the extreme majority of Australians don't like Donald Trump. It's a pretty low way to the high office, but that's the way it always works on the left. They get to say, we're doing this. And if you don't believe in what we're doing, then somehow there must be something evil and nasty and Trumpian and racist and all of that crap. Well, thankfully, Australia turned around and said, didn't just say no, they said hell no. They said hell no to being told what to do, hell no to the proposition. And just as I say, when things don't go the way you expect, when things go the way they are, that's not forever. That was just for one day in October in 2023. It doesn't tell us anything about the next federal election. But certainly we know that one of the ways that they are going to get revenge on people who voted no is that this government is planning to censor the internet. Now, previously, when anyone has been talking about censoring the internet, everyone runs a mile. But you see, now we've invented this new thing, which isn't a lie, and it's not defamation, and it's not inciting anyone. It's just the stuff the government doesn't agree with, the stuff the front of the plane doesn't agree with, and that's misinformation. So we must pass a piece of legislation banning it. fining anyone if they leave it on the internet. And there's some conversation that this may well be extended to existing television and radio broadcasts. But what it really is about trying to go after people on the internet who share the things that they see on television and radio. That's the censoring of the internet. And even if this is your type of government and you like it centre-left loviness, do you want to empower who you politically disagree with to be the one who decides what is and is not misinformation? What they get to use their organs of government to deny you seeing on the internet? Because that is exactly what is playing out right now. And again, Warren Mundine saying about this plan, they're not just putting up this bill because they're nice, they're putting up this bill because they want to silence their opponents. It's the most dangerous bill because every cornerstone of every liberal democracy with freedoms and liberties is free speech. They want to censor the internet. Don't fall for their smart, clever little language change. They want to censor the internet. And people in the political class will chortle it all along because simply political points they disagree with is misinformation. And you couldn't possibly be trusted with the facts because, you see, they prefer it when the polls are winning on the vibe. What about this with the Treasurer? He's got a new one. This is unbelievable. Now, you remember for a long time when the reason power prices were high was not at all because Australia's spending billions of dollars in full transition of our energy scheme. It was because of Ukraine.
Russian invasion of Ukraine and the implications of that reverberating around the world with global inflation.
We've got an inflation problem in our economy because we've got a war in Ukraine.
The Russian invasion of Ukraine, as well as supply chain shortages, has had an impact on global inflation.
We've got an inflation problem in our economy because Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine.
Economic consequences of Russia's illegal and immoral invasion of Ukraine.
Well, Grim Jim's got a new one. Now, despite the fact that inflation continues to be too high, so much high that the Reserve Bank is seriously thinking about, yet again, increasing interest rates, that would, of course, be the 12th of his time as the Treasurer, he's got a new reason why everything costs more than it should. It won't surprise you.
Conflict in the Middle East is now another concerning part of the economic outlook.
Oh, now it's what's happening in Israel. Because, of course, Australia's economic relationship with Israel is the largest trading partner we possibly have. And there's so much back and forth between here and Gaza. Seriously? Now, I love the way these people play. Now, he's, of course, going to turn around and say that maybe that's the reason why petrol's going to stay high. Because the Arab states may well end up choking the petrol supply from the rest of the world, particularly the Western world, if it gets in behind Israel, as it obviously seems that they are. I don't know. But that's too complicated to say. So we're just going to pretend that you sitting at home are so stupid with your mouth open, just searching for the next bit of misinformation to gobble up because you're apparently a moron. Despite the fact that you voted the way they wanted you to on same-sex marriage. They voted the way you wanted them to. They wanted you to in 2022, despite the fact that you did what they wanted you to do, which was to elect Labor governments everywhere but Tasmania. But you see, you're off kilter at the moment because you're not saying it's the greatest government of all time. Now, of course, one of the reasons why the Treasurer today decided to pretend that it's all about Israel, our economy at the moment, was because the number of full-time jobs in the country has shrunk. In the past month, more than a football stadium of people lost a full-time job. Now, remember, with a full-time job comes holiday pay, sickness pay, domestic violence leave, all of these other things. 39,900 full-time jobs just disappeared, replaced with 46,500 part-time jobs. Now, because one job is replaced with another job, regardless of what type of job, it makes it seem like the economy is completely amazing and therefore unemployment remains relatively low. But the people who actually employ both part-time and full-time people are having a lot of trouble right now. In fact, according to the latest ASIC figures, more businesses are going belly up right now than since 2015. So right now, 2023, the end of 2023, the last bit of 2023, worse than the pandemic, worse than even before then, worse than 2015. ASIC data shows that 2,486 businesses hit the wall in the 3 months to September. That's up 10% on the previous quarter, 21% on the previous year. It is the largest number of insolvencies reported in a single quarter since December 2015. Oh yeah, and one other one. Of course, petrol is one of the reasons why inflation is counted the way that it is, and petrol is up at about, the inflation rate in petrol is the best part of 14%. Of course, they could reduce it by 25% at the petrol bowser because of, or 25 cents I should say, by being able to pull back on the fuel excise, but they won't. Because you see, they need that money for what exactly? They've already told us in the intergenerational report that they expect a deficit every single year for the next 40 years. Oh, you know, where they also expect Australia's population to be 60,000 people. 40 million, there we go. 40 million people by 2060. Sorry, been a big week, lots of numbers. Oh, but to dare talk about that means the evils of Trump and immigration. And of course, your power bills continue to go up because of the decision made by this government, shaked on by everyone else when they thought, oh, it was consensus politics. Now, all of these people were fine. They all probably live in teal seats or the inner city green seats of Melbourne and Brisbane. So they championed the idea of not just the 43% when it comes to emissions reduction, but 80% when it comes to renewable energy. And what have I said the whole way through? This needs to be built, which means it's going to cost billions of dollars. And pick your estimate. It can be anywhere between $1 and a lot more than $1 trillion. Well, power prices are expected to go up, in part. Why? Because El Nino is now going to drive up power bills. Because you see, as the Bureau of Meteorology have told us, that during an El Nino, when things are drier, there's less wind. So despite the fact that we have to spend billions of dollars for wind to power the country, there'll be less wind because of the weather. Okay, seems like we're making incredible decisions as Australians. But misinformation. And one more time, just for those people who need to play along at home. The list of how's it going under this mob. Don't talk about the voice, move on. Talk about consensus politics. Focus on the fact that they were able to get bills through the Parliament. 11 interest rate rises on their watch. Record high petrol prices, but they won't cut the tax. Power prices keep going up. They're not down by $275. And remember, that number is from May 2022, not from the record highs of last year. 10 cents off the Australian dollar. It means everything that comes into the country costs more. They took $1,500 away from your tax return for 10 million workers. They've introduced new superannuation taxes. Yes, that's for people with more than $3 million in, but still, it means less money for people's retirement. You don't fiddle with super. They have not delivered the 24/7 nurses in aged care by October. They are a more secretive government, not a more transparent one. They are trying to censor the internet, and they pissed $450 million against the wall. Oh, yeah. But Peter Dutton's the problem. Quick break, back with more here on Paul Murray Live. Got a super panel, all stars, all night. Tell me who you think winner and loser of the week is. Jump onto our socials. You can also send me an email, paul@skynews.com.au. And we'll have a chat about the Liberal MP who keeps voting against the Liberal Party. More in a sec. Thank you very much for watching. How's this for a mega panel this evening? Nothing but all stars. Welcome to another sausage party, but it's a good one this Thursday night. The great Graham Richardson, the king amongst us, the Labor legend, the living legend, the man that we love here, of course, is joining us from Sydney. In Canberra right now is none other than Senator James Regar from Queensland. Well, I can't pump anyone up as much as Richo, so I'll just continue on here. The wonderful Michael Kroger, of course, joining us from Melbourne, as is Nicholas Rees, their Deputy Mayor. So let's get on with it. Now, Richo, you were literally the first. Back when the vibe was saying 60-40 yes, you were one of the first to come out and say, not going to happen, right? What were you able to smell that nobody else could in the Labor kitchen when this thing was flying high and you were able to say, it's going to sink like a stone?
Well, I don't think it's a matter of any great insight. I mean, it's just the fact that referendums don't get up here. So the only way you're going to get a referendum up, basically, is to give a gold bar to every voter. I didn't see that happening, so I thought it would go under.
Also, what about today, where the conversation where, James, you saw this play out in the Senate yesterday, which is that the Labor Party is going to go out of its way, Greens, Pocock as well. They're going to punish Jacinta Price, right? Her place in history is to be punished for denying the Prime Minister his place in history. And what do you think about particularly the performance of Tim Ayres, New South Wales Senator, to deciding to leap in that it was all some sort of a revenge attack, trying to have a royal commission into what's been happening to kids in Indigenous areas?
It was shameful what happened in the Senate this week. What Senator Ayres said and what some of the Green senators said, I actually thought shame upon the Senate. Senator Napier Price has long been an advocate for the rights of children, to protect children, and it just shows that Labor don't actually understand what happened on Saturday. They don't understand why the Australian people voted no, and the more that Labor go down this path of playing politics rather than coming up and supporting practical solutions, just shows they're just going to end up in a very bad place, and that could be opposition.
Nicholas, obviously you're somebody that was disappointed by the referendum result, but what about sort of the elbow pivot? Nothing to see here, nothing behind me, no $450 million bin fire, no rejection of the idea by 60% of the country. Instead, he's strutting around and pretending that it was a 60-40 result the other way. And what about this narrative that they're already starting to build, right? Okay, politics is a bare-knuckle business, but already people out there with the, let's just be direct. Peter Dutton is Australia's Donald Trump garbage that is starting to float around as the long-term narrative they're going to try and build against Dutton, who, last time I checked, was on the side where the majority of Australians were on this issue.
Well, look, I think Anthony Albanese wants to move the debate on to cost of living as quickly as possible, and that's why you would have heard Labor saying that cost of living is the number one issue about 1 million times so far this week.
Just not
on
last
Bridget
week.
Archer, I mean, I do think that one of the strengths of the Liberal Party, you might not expect to say this, but one of the strengths of the Liberal Party is that they do allow their MPs to vote with their conscience, and they do allow them to cross the floor if their conscience so directs them. In fact, I would like to see the Labor Party give more latitude for that sort of thing. And so it may be a source of great inconvenience and annoyance to Peter Dutton today that Bridget Archer has done that, but I actually think what she has done is part of one of the strengths of the Liberal Party. So much as it may annoy you and James and many others on that side of politics, I think there's a broader principle that we saw there today, which is actually a pretty good thing in Australian politics.
She can vote whichever way she wants, as long as it means one less teal, then I don't care, right, about what happens, because you're either part of less than 76, which means that you're in minority or opposition, or if you're in government, hopefully you have a little more than that. So I'm not going to fall for the outrage that is what Liberals can do, which is to cross the floor. In this case, I think it was a wrong decision, but I'm not going to give people what they want. But Nicholas, again, the narrative, Michael, the narrative. You see this here about what is trying to be built. The most extreme leader the Liberal Party's ever had. It really is the click and drag of the Republican Democrat thing. Remember when they hated John McCain? They hated John McCain because he was standing in the way of Barack Obama, and then he became the lion of the Senate. They hated Mitt Romney with the binders full of women, but then, of course, he turned around and started bagging Trump. So, well, he's the lion of the Senate. People can see this, right? Now, I don't think that seats like Blaxland are about to flip towards the Liberal Party, but very obviously there needs to be a push into the suburbs. They're not going to go via the Teals. But what about this framing of Dutton as sort of Aussie Trump, and they're trying to do this as the next rhetorical phase between now and the election after the budget next year?
He doesn't seem to have much in common with Trump at all, so I don't think that's going to work. I mean, you could say that a Clive Palmer had elements of Trumpism, but Dutton is an entirely different character, so that's not going to work. What is troubling Labor is the fact that Dutton is appealing to the working middle class. And Albanese is caught in this terrible bind between being the plaything of some of the extreme left Aboriginal leadership, the aristocracy, and he's losing his working class base. So all the wealthy people voted with him and all his middle class and lower class base, working class base didn't. That's his problem. He ought to worry about his own problem. And it's hard for opposition leaders to win first terms. We know that. We know there hasn't been a one-term federal government in Australia since 1931. We know that. So it's very hard for Dutton to win. But if that's their criticism of Dutton, that's not going to work. The next election is going to be one on policy, and Albo's going to struggle in some areas, I think.
Now, next cap off the rank when it comes to the state elections is going to be Queensland, and Anastasia Palaszczuk says she's going to go all the way to the end. She can at least read the room about how the voice went down in Queensland as hard as it did, and after the LNP withdrew its support for a treaty with Indigenous Queenslanders, it looks like they won't be going forward with that in Queensland. Here's what the Premier had to say today.
Well, I think you need to speak to him to hear firsthand why he is going against what he said very clearly in the Parliament he was going to do. Well, the next stage is truth-telling, and that's a 3 to 4 year process, and that's something that was voted on a bipartisan manner in the Queensland Parliament. And I urge you to go and look at all of the statements and the comments that were made in the speeches up in Cairns.
Now, Richo, obviously Australia has to deal with its Indigenous past, but also wants to find a united future. Is this a decision that's being made by Palaszczuk because, there's no upper house, she's got a majority to just shove anything she wants through between now and the next election? Maybe she'll try to do what she did before the last election and make it a criminal offence to point out if any candidates are going before the Corruption Commission. Literally, that's what they tried to do just before the last election. Is this about that state election and about not copying the whiplash after the voice, or is it a principled position because unless it's bipartisan, you couldn't possibly enter a treaty with your own people?
Well, I know it's the former, and I hope it's the latter as well. There's no question that up in Queensland, you've got to be very careful on anything that's an Aboriginal issue. And I think she's learned her lessons on that, and I think she's been very, very careful. But she reads the room pretty well. You've got to give it to Anastasia over time. She's picked a mark. She's known what Queenslanders want, and as smart politicians do, she gave them a lot of it. Not all of it, because you never can give them everything they want. But I think she's judged it pretty well, and I think she's still, likely to win the next one. She's awfully hard to beat.
Well, reality is she is the most successful female politician the country's ever produced. As much as I can't stand that they keep re-electing her, she does constantly. So you can't underestimate someone with the form, but still, may her fortune zigzag between now and the next election and a better result come out of Queensland. But let's before we get after the break, we'll get into the matters to do with Gaza, the Labor Party, Israel, all the rest of it here. But again, I just want to talk here about in Queensland, apparently the number of threats against politicians or against their staffers are starting to increase as people are frankly frustrated with everything from cost of living through to youth crime. I think cost of living is hardly a reason to be sending threats to a politician. Of course, there's no reason to be sending threats to a politician. But, Senator, let's speak to this idea about the frustration that people feel right now, because they must feel in lots of parts of Queensland, and I remember this when we were in Charters Towers just a few weeks ago, they are mighty peed off that the South East Queensland state government couldn't care less, and the one in Canberra seems to care even less about average people.
And what they've just seen on the weekend is the Labor government in Canberra spend $450 million on a referendum that went down the drain. They feel like they're not being listened to because the big issues in Queensland are cost of living, it's crime, it's hospital ramping, it's infrastructure. We've got a long-term Labor government that hasn't delivered. So you've got this frustration there. But that's no excuse to be rude to the staff of a politician or to be rude to a politician. In fact, I'm happy for people to be rude to me, but as long as they're funny about it. You shouldn't threaten a politician.
Come on, Nicholas.
Seriously, be rude about it.
Nicholas Richo, be as rude as you want to the Senator. What's something rude, but as long as it's funny?
Totally.
I think that's pretty important.
Yeah, Richo, give it to him.
No, I don't want to give it. I mean, I agree with him. I like to laugh when I'm being abused. If you laugh at him, it hurts them more.
Correct.
So I've always been a great supporter of that idea.
Correct. All right.
I must say, James always comes up with sensible things. I can't understand why he's in the bloody Liberal Party.
There you go.
Cannot get it.
Don't say that, Richo.
Come on. I mean,
you just killed me. All right, come on, Nicholas. Bring us back to work. Bring us back into the yes bubble, mate.
I know. I mean, I'm just sorry, James. I mean, you really just spent too much time in the tropics there, and I think it's done something to your brain. It's gone a little bit off because that answer was just so limp, so boilerplate, so pathetic. You could have said that answer any time over the last 20 years. Oh, it's cost of living. It's because the government's been there for too long. Actually, the reasons why politics is coarser and harsher and, frankly, more violent than it's been in the past is for far deeper reasons than the ordinary everyday issues which are coming up in Queensland as they always have. I think it's got to do with the nature of social media. I think it's got to do with the coarseness of the discourse.
So censor the internet. Censor the internet. It's the misinformation. It's the memes. It's the awful people. Censor the internet.
I don't necessarily like that. I don't like that as a solution either, Paul. That's why it's complicated.
Yeah, well,
but I do think there is something to do with...
That's a good thing.
Oh... Yeah, the messages that people expose and just the coarseness of it. We'll all get off this TV program tonight, look at our phones and go, oh my God, as the freight train of hate comes barrelling down. It's not cool. Like, it's terrible and it's debasing our politics, and I want to see something done about it, and I'm not exactly sure what it is.
I get mine each and every week, and it's a badge of honour. Fridays in The Guardian, Mondays on the ABC. Job well done. All right, quick break, back with more here on Paul Murray Live. We're going to talk about Biden and his supposed deal that he got out of Benjamin Netanyahu. We'll get to that in a second, plus these Labor MPs. Are they standing up against collective punishment, or are they causing greater punishment to their side of politics? More in a second. The Industry Minister, Ed Husic, made it clear today that he does not approve of what the Israeli government is doing in revenge for what Hamas did to the Israeli people a couple of weeks ago. Roll the tape.
I feel very strongly that Palestinians are being collectively punished here for Hamas's barbarism. I really do feel that there is an obligation on governments, particularly the Israeli government, to, as we have said, follow the rules of international law and to observe, in particular, that innocence should be protected.
All right, bring everyone up because there's plenty of people to say lots of things in the next 5 minutes or so. So let's get to James McGrath, Richo, Nicholas Rees, Michael Kroger. Michael, we'll start with you, and remember, every second you speak, you're taking off somebody else, so it's up to you. What did you think of what you heard today from the Industry Minister?
Well, as long as I don't take up the time of James McGrath, but...
you might be, that's the thing, you never know. That's why we've got to keep it pithy.
He spoke in... Both he and Ali spoke in code today, and I've been waiting all day for Albo or the opposition or someone in the media to work out what his coded language was, which no one has worked out yet. So the term he used of collective punishment is a war crime under the Geneva Convention. So he is the first, unless Richo can correct me, he is the first minister and Ali too, Anne Ali, they are the first two ministers in Australian political history to accuse Israel of war crimes, unless I'm mistaken.
No, I think you're right.
And Albanese needs to condemn these two, because what Israel are doing are defending their country from the slaughterous barbarians that are Hamas. And apart from accusing the Israelis of war crimes, the other thing that needs to be said is, why is the world's media giving equal attention and weight to what Hamas says about the bombing of the car park as to what Israel says? As if there's some sort of equivalent between this low human scum that is Hamas, who are down there with Idi Amin and Pol Pot, and you know, in the post-Hitler era, these are the ISIS, the Al-Qaeda of the 2023. Yet, of course, when it comes to the press, well, we have to listen to what they say. I mean, why do you give any weight whatsoever to what this human scum says? I wouldn't believe a word of what Hamas says about the bombing, about about the number of people killed or anything. So these are the people to blame, Mr Husick and Ms Ali, not Israel. And Albanese needs to bring you two to account and disassociate himself from your criticism that Israel are involved in war crimes.
Richo, was this the bad thing to do from the minister?
Wasn't real smart. He's a friend of mine, and I wish I didn't have to say it, but not good. And he ought to get up, apologise and get out of this quickly. That's what my old man always said. If you've stuffed it up, get out quick, he used to say. Well, Ed, get out quick.
But for Nicholas, as you know, Gaza, the average age of the population there is 19. There's 7-year-olds there that clearly aren't members of Hamas, and I presume that's what he was talking about when it comes to food and water. But what do you think? It's a big step for a cabinet minister to go there.
Well, look, Ed Husick is, a long time, was a long time regular on this program, and I think we all know him to be a good man. He's also, I think, one of only 2 Muslim ministers in the government. So I can imagine there would be a lot of people in his community who are raising with him concerns about what they're seeing happen in Gaza. I agree fully with Michael about the depravity, the barbarism we saw on display last week, and I think Israel has every right for retribution, and they're going to go deep and they're going to go hard, but at some point there'll be a question that will be raised about civilian lives and the loss of civilian lives, and I think that Ed today was putting that on the table, and I think that is a legitimate debating point.
James, you get the last say and 30 seconds to do it.
Well, Albo can clean this up by actually going to Israel and meeting with the Prime Minister Netanyahu. He can do what Biden has done. He can do what Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is doing. He can go to Israel and show that we're on the side of the only free liberal democracy in the Middle East. So it's in Albo's corner.
My bet, he probably will. Maybe not on the way there, but probably on the way back. Interesting about what the treatment will be in the US as well, with the violence taking place. Will it be the full song and dance of the state dinner, or just a couple of quick meetings? Not that meetings in the White House are not insignificant when they happen, but they will all happen, and you'll see it all here on our air next week. Thank you, lads. I do appreciate it. Have a wonderful weekend wherever you happen to be. Sausage party done. God love it. Quick break, back with more. We're going on our way towards Mildura this weekend, and an update on the beautiful things that we are bringing to Mildura this weekend for our town. God love him. Joe's getting ready. Joe Hildebrand, of course, getting ready for the late debate. Normally, like he normally does. You know how on air you say, "So, how are you?" Sometimes, even when he knows that we're counting down, coming off the break, and I'm saying, "Hi, how are you?" Anyway, you'll hear it all in a moment or two's time. Now, Mildura, love you, brother. Cannot wait to see you Sunday night for our town. Now, thank you to the generosity of people watching this show, anonymous people that have given thousands of dollars, the biggest names in showbiz like the great Kyle Sandilands, and normal people like yourself. We've got more than $100,000 worth of stuff that we're going to be giving to Mildura Hospital to take care of the sick kids that are there. But as always, we like to celebrate the joy and the fun of these areas. So we try to do something a little bit different along the way. Now, I'm going to be BMXing there this weekend, but even more cool, I'm going to be living, now, little known fact, that Liz Storer, she went to the Commonwealth Games twice. Once for diving, but we don't talk about that. The second time was for roller derby. Now, I will be roller derbying Liz style this Sunday. Some of that sentence is true. See you Sunday. Go Yankees. Ta-da.